Hi guys, so I'm doing a video today that's a little bit different. I'm doing a tag which was started by Eric from the channel The Lonesome Reader, and it's called the Future Classics Book Tag. I thought it was really interesting hearing his ideas on what books he thinks will become classics in the future, or ones that are already very popular but will continue to be so in the years to come. So I thought it would be really interesting to have a think myself about these things and answer the questions. I'll link his original video in the description, and I'll also list the questions, so if you want to also answer them either in the comments of my video or in his, or if you want to make a video yourself, then of course do feel free. I'd love to hear what you think as well. So the first question was, pick an established classic that you think will still be relevant in the future. I think that books that have something to say about our society and the potential directions that it's going in the future are always ones that will stand the test of time, and I think that Eric's answer of George Orwell's 1984 is probably the best answer you could come up with for this. And I've got a couple of answers, I think. Firstly, along the same kind of lines, I would say Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale is really an example of a book that will stand the test of time. I think that classics that are about the position of women in society are only going to get more popular as they are increasingly relevant in our day and age. I think The Handmaid's Tale is maybe too obvious an answer in the era of Trump's presidency, so I also have another answer, and I would say that Kazuo Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go is an example of a book that has gained huge popularity, but I think it will only increase as time goes by. This is a book that's difficult to talk about without avoiding spoilers, and I think it's a book that is really worth reading without knowing very much. So all I'll say is that I think its ideas surrounding the intersection of medicine and morality are extremely pertinent in our day and age, and I think they're issues that will become even more relevant as time goes on and medicine advances, and humanity has to make decisions not about what we can do, but about what we should do. The book only came out just over 10 years ago, so I think it's a bit of a stretch to call it a classic already, but it has attained a kind of cult status, and especially since Ishiguro just won the Nobel Prize for Literature, I think it will definitely become ingrained in our kind of literary canon. So the second question is, pick a recent book which you feel has gone under the radar, but which you're confident will be a future classic. And I think I found this question the most difficult because I do quite a lot of research before I buy any book, especially now that I'm watching lots of booktube videos, and it means that I'm often quite well informed about the books that I'm purchasing, and they're usually ones that have received quite a lot of critical acclaim, but on the flip side it means that I rarely discover books that not many people have heard about. So I'm going to choose one that was published a few years back, but it's really incredible, and I think it's worthy of the status of classic, and it's Haruki Murakami's Q-teen-84 or 1Q84. I read it for the first time in 2013, and I really want to get around to it again this year. It's just a wonderful reading experience, and he really takes you on a ride with this book. It's inspired by George Orwell's 1984, and it's about an alternate reality in Japan called Q-teen-84, and I think it deals with actually really profound topics like religious extremism and cults, and also things like the distinction between reality and the supernatural. I find Murakami's work really difficult to describe because it's pretty weird, and he's a famous author. I know he's received a huge amount of critical acclaim, but he's someone that I feel like I don't hear as much about in the UK as I would like. He's one of my favourite authors, and I do think that he's one who will only rise in prominence even after his death, and I do think that this book in particular will be seen as his magnum opus. Question 3 is, pick a title that won one of your favourite book prizes recently which you think will still be lauded in 50 years' time. So I quite like the Goldsmiths Prize because it celebrates books that have slightly unusual literary form, and in particular I really love the 2016 winner, Solar Bones by Mike McCormack. And I have to be honest, I heard about this book actually after it won the Goldsmiths Prize. It was actually when it was longlisted for the Man Booker Prize last year, although it was then not shortlisted. Though the winner Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders was also one that was slightly pushing the boundaries of conventional form, although quite controversially, I preferred Solar Bones. I have made a separate review all about this book, so I will link it below because I'm sure that's much more articulate than what I'll say now. But in terms of the plot itself, it's fairly mundane. It's about a man who is an engineer who lives a very ordinary life with an ordinary family. Where this book really excels is the way it is written. So it's written in a stream of consciousness style, so it has very little punctuation and no full stops. It just uses line breaks to denote pauses in the text. And this can seem really daunting to a reader, and when I started it I was like, I think I'm going to find it pretentious. But I would really recommend, if you think you might feel that way, to give it a go anyway, because it completely defied all my expectations and I absolutely adored it. I found the writing itself really beautiful. It muses on ideas like society and politics and family life, and I thought that the style really fit the content. I'm not sure if this will receive any sort of further accolades or become a classic. I really loved it, although I have seen and read some kind of slightly more lukewarm reviews for it, but I would really love if it gained more popularity in the future. Question 4 is, pick a recent book you haven't read yet but which you think might become a classic based on reputation alone, for example reviews, responses on GoodReads, booktube recommendations, etc. So I'm going to choose a book that has actually not even come out yet, so I think it's a little bit of a risky choice, but I feel confident that there is enough hype surrounding it and the author herself is very good, so I think it's worth hedging my bets. So it's Circe by Madeline Miller, who is the author of The Song of Achilles, another book that I've not actually read either, although I have reserved it from the library, so I will be reading it very shortly. This one tells the story of Circe from Homer's Odyssey, and I don't really know much more than that. I think though it is the kind of story that has the potential to become a classic because the tale itself is classic. It has universal themes that won't go out of vogue, and it's not about contemporary issues that will no longer be relevant in 10 or 20 or 100 years. So for those reasons I think it has potential there to be the right type of story to become a classic, and I can't speak to whether it's any good or not, although I do have high hopes for it. It's also received endorsements from authors that I trust, like Donna Tartt and Amir McBride, and also a lot of endorsements from high quality newspapers, so yeah, I think it's going to be good. The last question is, pick a favourite book that you want to save for your grandchildren or your friends' grandchildren to read in 50 years' time. And I'm going to choose Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude. I think it's just about my favourite book of all time, so if I can encourage anyone else in the world to read it, then I think I've done my duty. I really hope it's as well known and as well regarded in 50 years as it is now, and I think it will be. He is obviously an author who has fairly recently died, and I think his works will kind of reach cult status over time. I think for similar reasons as the other books I've talked about, I think it will stay a classic and become even more ingrained in our sort of literary canon because it has timeless themes. I think it's really about the nature of time itself and its cyclical properties, and it's also about ideas of nationhood, which is really relevant nowadays, and about family dynamics, and these are things that are both universal and completely timeless, so I imagine that this book will be relevant for many years to come. It's also just one of the most brilliant and beautiful books I've ever read, so please read it if you haven't. I feel like this is the whole purpose of this video, is just to make you read 100 Years of Solitude if you've not yet. But yeah, so those are my answers to those questions. I hope you found them interesting, and I hope you maybe discovered 1 or 2 books that you've not read. Let me know your answers if you want to, or please make a video of your own, that'd be really cool. And I will see you really soon in my next video. Bye bye.